I never thought an ordinary Tuesday afternoon would end with my hands shaking on a courthouse steering wheel. I was sitting in my truck outside the county auction house, sipping cold coffee, scrolling through foreclosure listings like I did every week. That's my job. I flip distressed properties. Nobody in my family knew that. Nobody in my family knew much about me at all anymore. My phone buzzed. My sister, Denise. "Don't bother showing up for Thanksgiving," she texted. "You'll just embarrass yourself again, Marcus." I stared at that message for a long time. Denise always said things like that. Ever since Dad passed, she'd decided I was the family disappointment, the one who never amounted to anything, the one who worked some random real estate job while she and her husband climbed the ladder in their perfect suburban house. That house, the house she loved showing off at every holiday. I opened my laptop, checked the auction docket one more time before walking inside. And there it was, 1847 Willow Creek Lane. Denise's address. My stomach dropped. My coffee went cold in my hand. I read the listing 3 times, convinced I was misunderstanding something. But I wasn't. Her house, the house she bragged about nonstop, was going up for auction in 20 minutes. And I was about to walk inside and bid on it. The auction hall smelled like old paper and stale coffee. Rows of folding chairs faced a small podium where a tired-looking auctioneer shuffled through his clipboard. I sat near the back, hood pulled over my head, heart hammering against my ribs. I still couldn't believe it. Denise and Paul always acted like they had everything figured out. The granite countertops, the 2 Range Rovers in the driveway, the Facebook posts tagged "blessed" under photos of their backyard pool. How does a house like that end up here? I thought about calling her right then, warning her, but something stopped me. A memory of her voice at Dad's funeral, sharp and cold. At least I turned out successful, Marcus. Somebody in this family had to. The auctioneer cleared his throat. "Next property, 1847 Willow Creek Lane. Starting bid, $240,000. My throat tightened. 2 other bidders raised their paddles almost immediately. A heavy-set man in a golf polo and a young couple whispering to each other. I sat frozen for a second, paddle resting on my knee. Then I thought of every holiday I sat quiet while she humiliated me in front of relatives. I raised my paddle. "250, I said. The room went quiet. Heads turned. The heavy-set man glanced at me, annoyed, then raised his paddle again. "260. My hands were sweating now, but my voice stayed steady. "280. The young couple shook their heads and dropped out. It was just me and the man in the golf polo now, trading numbers back and forth like a slow-motion tennis match. Every bid climbed my pulse higher. I wasn't just buying property anymore. I was buying answers, because none of this made sense. Denise and Paul weren't broke. They couldn't be. Just last month, she posted pictures from a trip to Cabo, laughing on a yacht, captioned, "Living the Dream." She'd called me 2 weeks ago to brag about Paul's promotion at the firm. So how was her house sitting in foreclosure? $300,000, the auctioneer called out, looking at golf polo guy.
He hesitated, rubbed his jaw, then shook his head and lowered his paddle. Going once, going twice. My heart slammed against my chest. Sold to bidder 42. That was me. I sat there stunned, staring at the gavel coming down like it was happening to someone else. I had just bought my sister's house, the house she used to shut the door on my face, the house she called too nice for someone like me to ever step foot in. And she had no idea. I sat in the parking lot for almost an hour after signing the paperwork, staring at the deed in my hands like it might disappear if I blinked. 1847 Willow Creek Lane. Mine now. Legally. Completely mine. I should have felt triumphant. Instead, my chest ached with something closer to dread, because buying the house meant I now had access to records I never should have seen. Tax liens, missed mortgage payments stretching back 14 months, a second loan I didn't even know existed. Denise and Paul weren't just behind, they were drowning. I thought back to 6 months ago at Mom's birthday dinner. Paul had gotten quiet when someone asked about his job. Denise jumped in fast, talking over him, steering the conversation toward vacation photos instead. At the time, I figured he was just tired. Now I wondered if something else was going on. My phone rang. Denise. I almost didn't answer. Then I did. Marcus? Hey, she said, breezy, like always. So, Thanksgiving. Actually, ignore that text. Can you come? Paul's parents are visiting and I need the numbers to look right. You know how it is. Numbers to look right. I closed my eyes. Yeah, I said quietly. I'll be there. I hung up before she could hear my voice crack. I drove home that night with the radio off, replaying every holiday memory I had of Denise. The way she used to introduce me to her friends as, my brother, he does something with houses. Vague, dismissive, like my job embarrassed her. I never told her the truth. Never told her I'd built a company that quietly bought and flipped distressed properties across 3 states. Never told her what my bank account actually looked like. Somewhere along the way, staying quiet had become easier than proving myself to someone who'd already decided who I was. But now, I was holding a folder that told a very different story about her. I spent that night at my kitchen table, going through the documents I'd pulled from the county records. Paul had taken out a business loan 2 years ago, using the house as collateral. The business, some investment venture I'd never heard of, had folded within a year. Since then, they'd been juggling payments, refinancing, borrowing from one hole to fill another. The vacations, the new cars, all of it built on debt that was quietly swallowing them whole. I thought about calling her right then, telling her everything, warning her before Thanksgiving, before she found out from a stranger, or worse, from me standing in her doorway holding the deed to her own home. But some cruel, exhausted part of me wanted to see her face first. I wanted the truth to look her in the eyes. Thanksgiving morning came cold and gray. I stood outside Denise's house, my house now, holding a pie like nothing was different. The wreath on the door, the pumpkins on the steps, all of it still staged like a magazine spread, like nothing underneath was cracking. Denise opened the door in a cream sweater, hair perfect, smile wide. "Marcus, you made it!" Behind her, Paul's parents sat in the living room, sipping wine, admiring the marble fireplace. Denise leaned in and whispered, "Just don't mention money stuff, okay? Paul's parents think we're doing great." I forced a smile. Wouldn't dream of it.
Dinner went the way it always did. Denise steering conversation, laughing a little too loud, refilling wine glasses to keep the mood light. Paul barely touched his plate. Every time his phone buzzed, his jaw tightened. After dinner, while Denise showed off the backyard renovation to Paul's mother, I caught Paul alone in the kitchen. "You look tired," I said carefully. He exhaled, glancing toward the hallway to make sure no one was listening. "You have no idea, man." For a second, something in his eyes looked like he wanted to say more, like he was one sentence away from unraveling. Then Denise's laugh rang out from the yard, and he straightened up fast, plastering on a smile. "Forget it. Let's just get through today." 2 weeks later, my phone rang at 6 in the morning. Denise's name lit up the screen, and something about the hour made my stomach twist before I even answered. "Marcus," her voice was shaking, "something's wrong. There's a letter from the bank. It says our house was..." She stopped, like the words physically hurt to say. It says our house was sold at auction. That's not possible, right? That has to be a mistake. I sat up in bed, gripping the phone tighter. Denise, breathe. Tell me what it says. It says a new owner is listed on the deed. Some company, Willow Ridge Holdings. Her voice cracked. Marcus, we're going to lose everything. Paul won't even talk to me. He's been sleeping in the office for a week. Willow Ridge Holdings, my company. The name she'd never bothered to learn because she'd never bothered to ask what I actually did for a living. My chest tightened with something between guilt and grim clarity. I'm coming over, I said. Please, she whispered. I don't know what we're going to do. I hung up and sat there in the dark for a long moment, the weight of what I was about to walk into pressing down on me. She still had no idea the new owner sitting behind that company name was her own brother. The brother she'd told not to bother showing up. I found Denise sitting at her kitchen table when I arrived, the letter from the bank spread out in front of her like evidence at a crime scene. Her eyes were red and swollen. Paul sat across from her, quiet, staring at his coffee like it held answers. They can't just take our house, Denise said, more to herself than to me. We've been paying, late but paying. Paul finally spoke, voice flat. I stopped telling her how bad it got. I thought I could fix it before she found out. Denise turned to him, eyes wide with betrayal. You told me the loan was handled. You told me we were fine. I didn't want you to worry, he said quietly. I didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me right now. The room felt like it was cracking open, months of hidden fears spilling out at once. I sat down slowly, the folder from the auction house still in my bag, untouched. Denise wiped her face and looked at me, desperate. Marcus, you know about this stuff. Real estate, foreclosures. Please, is there anything we can do? Anything at all? I felt the weight of the deed sitting in my bag like a stone. There might be, I said carefully, but you need to know something first. Her face went pale. What? I reached into my bag and pulled out the folder, setting it on the table between us. My hands weren't steady anymore. I was at the auction, I said, the day your house went up for sale. Denise blinked, confused. What? Why would you be at... Because it's what I do, Denise. It's been what I do for 6 years. I buy distressed properties. I flip them, rent them, invest in them. Willow Ridge Holdings isn't some random company. I paused, forcing myself to meet her eyes. It's mine. The silence that followed felt like a lifetime. Willow Ridge is you? Her voice was barely a whisper. You bought my house? I didn't know it was going up to auction until that morning. I saw the address and I couldn't believe it. I sat in that room and watched strangers bid on your home, Denise. I couldn't let someone else take it. Paul's face went white. Wait, you own our house right now? I nodded slowly. Legally, yes.
Denise's hands trembled against the table. Years of dismissing me, mocking my job, telling relatives I did something with houses like it was a joke. All of it colliding with the truth sitting in front of her. You're the reason I still have a roof, she whispered, and I never even knew what you did. Denise sat frozen, staring at me like she was seeing a stranger. All this time, she said slowly, I thought you were struggling. I thought I was the one who had it figured out. You told everyone that, I said, not unkindly, at every holiday, every family dinner. Her eyes filled again, but this time it wasn't fear, it was shame. I said those things because I needed to feel like I was ahead of somebody. My marriage was falling apart behind closed doors. Paul and I were drowning in debt, and standing next to you made me feel like I still had something together. She wiped her face. That's a horrible reason, I know. Paul reached for her hand, and for the first time all morning, she let him take it. I sat back, letting it settle. 6 years of built-up resentment didn't disappear in one conversation, but something in the room had shifted. "Here's what I can do," I said. "I'll lease the house back to you both, at a rate you can actually afford. No gains. You rebuild your credit, refinance when you're ready, and buy it back from me at fair value. But this only works if you're honest, with each other and with me." Denise let out a shaky breath, half laugh, half sob. "You're really going to help us after everything?" "You're my sister," I said simply. That never stopped being true. 3 months passed before I saw real change in that house. Paul started seeing a financial counselor every Tuesday, no more hiding bank statements in desk drawers. Denise picked up freelance design work she'd abandoned years ago, determined to help dig them out instead of just posting vacation photos to cover the cracks. I stopped by one Sunday afternoon to drop off the signed lease agreement. Denise met me at the door, no makeup, hair pulled back, wearing sweats instead of another curated outfit for company. It was the most real I'd seen her in years. "I told Paul's parents the truth," she said, leading me inside. "About the debt, about almost losing the house. I was terrified they'd judge us." "How'd that go?" "Paul's dad admitted they'd gone through something similar years ago. Nobody talked about it. Turns out shame runs in every family, not just ours." She managed a small laugh. "I spent so long trying to look perfect for people who were probably struggling just as much." She glanced toward the mantel, where an old family photo sat, the two of us as kids, gap-toothed and laughing on Dad's shoulders. "I'm sorry, Marcus," she said quietly, "for every comment, every joke about your job. I made you small so I could feel big." I nodded slowly, throat tight. "Just don't do it again." "I won't," she said. "I promise." A year later, I stood on that same porch on Willow Creek Lane, except this time I wasn't dropping off paperwork. I was holding an envelope with the final refinance documents, the ones that would put the house back in Denise and Paul's name for good. Denise opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been watching from the window all morning. She looked different now, steadier, calmer, like someone who'd stopped performing a life and started actually living one. "Is it really done?" she asked, hands trembling as I handed her the envelope. "It's done. The house is yours, officially this time. No games, no hiding." She hugged me tight, longer than she had ever had before. Behind her, Paul stood in the doorway, a genuine smile on his face instead of the tired mask he used to wear. That Thanksgiving, when I walked through that door again, nobody whispered for me to keep quiet about anything. Denise stood up during dinner, glass raised, voice thick with emotion. "To my brother," she said, looking at me, "who I underestimated my whole life, who bought my house back from me instead of watching me lose it. I used to think success looked like granite countertops and vacation photos. Now I know it looks like honesty." I raised my glass, throat tight, heart full. Some family bonds break under pressure. Ours had finally learned to hold.